Hello, Hoops Heads, and welcome to the Double Dribble. I am Jimmy Carlton, and joining me as always, Mitch Baumhoff.
Hello.
Like Russell Westbrook and Steven Adams, you will not be able to split us up.
Never. The media will try. They will try to break us down, Jimmy.
I thought that was a pretty legitimate question by that reporter.
Listen, it probably was, but we all know how Russ is.
Jumping on that grenade.
He is going to jump on that grenade.
I would jump on a grenade for you, Mitch.
Thanks, Jimmy. I'm glad to know that despite the fist fight that happened backstage wherein you assumed lead hosting duties, we are still together in this.
It was a battle to the death, but both of us proved unable to destroy the other one, and
or
so
really
now we decided
anything.
that I'll just host.
Yeah. I was like, all right, okay, fine. I'm tired. I'm worn out.
We will get into the Russell Westbrook and Steven Adams press conference a little later at the end of the show because it's my opinion that the podium side game has outpaced the actual NBA basketball games in terms of entertainment this playoffs. But we'll get into that in a little bit. First, a little non-playoffs news coming out of the best place to get information without it going through a media source, the Players Tribune. Dion Waiters had something to say today.
Yeah, Dion Waiters is a guy that you may or may not know that I'm a big proponent of for his extreme confidence on the basketball court. Despite maybe some limitations in his game, let's say. But Dion Waiters had a very interesting article that he posted in the Players Tribune, talking a little bit about his course to Miami this season, that team's incredible run to almost make the playoffs at the end of the year, and he also produced for us another great choice quote in the pantheon of choice quotes that are emerging out of this playoffs alone. What might be our next take that for data is
do you want me to set you up and then you nail it down with the hammer quote?
Yes, please.
All right, this is Dion Waiters writing in the Players Tribune. He writes pretty much the way he plays basketball.
Just recklessly.
Fourth quarter, 10 seconds left, tie game. I got the ball in my hands with the game on the line, and I already knew what was going to happen. Effing overtime. Let's get up out of here.
What's the analytics on that?
That's a W.
That is a W.
So Dion Waiters, Waiters Island, giving us some, making sure that we're not going to forget about the Miami Heat, who fell one game short of the playoffs, but trying to stay relevant.
Oh yeah, and
so that caught your eye today.
That caught my eye. I also really enjoyed his descriptions of Pat Riley, who is basically just the Godfather. I mean, we all kind of knew that, but to hear him talking about walking into Pat Riley's office with just the trophies lined up and all his rings and all that. Man, I'd sign up to play for him right now.
Yeah, I really enjoyed Dion Waiters' depiction of his relationship with Kevin Durant, where they must be like BFFs, and and to hear Dion Waiters talk about it, Kevin Durant is basically like counting his lucky stars, like lucky for the NBA, Dion Waiters and the Miami Heat aren't in the playoffs, which very well could be true because Dion Waiters is liable to have like 75 points any game, or
or 4 points,
or miss the game and oversleep. So
yeah. Oh yeah.
That's been non-playoff teams brought to you by Dion Waiters Island.
But now, as is the custom, obviously we're going through a couple of the busiest weeks of the season, Jimmy. It is the first round of the playoffs. We have 8 different series going on. And we need to break them all down in our allotted time, but we can't necessarily do that on our own. So
yeah, so we're going to bring in a guest, and as has been custom on the show, we might lose him due to technical difficulties at some point. We're hoping not. This is my friend and a very, very talented NBA writer, reporter, producer, editor, jack of all trades for USA Today Network. He's been covering the Cavs-Pacers series. Now that that's done, he is doing Bulls and Celtics, and he's basically just all over the Eastern Conference. Michael Singer, thanks for joining us, man.
Of course. Thanks for having me. Appreciate it, guys.
Right off the bat, you're a Cleveland guy. I know you spent some time in Cleveland with the series, and long time coming watching them win their championship last year. What was the mood and atmosphere around the team and around the city like after the first round series?
It was essentially the idea that they expected to be where they were. They, there had been all this chatter for the last 2 months that their defense was 29th in the NBA over the 2-month span. And, everyone was trying to pick them apart. They were about a 500 team since the All-Star break. So everyone, wanted to needle them and find the issues because that's the exciting part. Who can take down LeBron? Who can dethrone the defending champions? In reality, Nobody was going to beat LeBron in the first round. He's now 12-0 in first-round series. He's won 21 straight first-round games. I think
Incredible.
This number's insane. 48-7 overall in first-round series in his career. 48-7. So he hasn't lost a first-round game since 2012. I mean, I know these just because I've been editing all of our stories on the Cavs, so I have these top of the mind. Essentially, everybody assumed that this was going to happen. Maybe the Pacers put up more of a fight. I'm sure you guys have seen the number that it was the closest series in terms of point differential in however many years. It was, I think, 16-point difference in the 4 games. The reality is Cavs stepped up. They did what they needed to. They sort of hit the reset button, given that it's the postseason. And they see this as an entirely fresh slate, an entirely clean slate. And they feel like, we can slowly address all of our issues. And now the fact that they swept the Pacers, they've got a week off until their second round series against either the Raptors or the Bucks. So they can address their defensive issues. They can watch film. They can rest, which, as we've seen, injuries can derail championship aspirations. So nothing but good vibes coming out of it. Yeah, a little bit dicey that they can't hold these double-digit leads in the second half. But you know what? They could take solace in the fact that they bought themselves a lot of time.
Yeah, for sure. Speaking of those 2 potential round 2 opponents, Mike, do you have a sense of whether the Bucks or the Raptors are the team that the Cavs would prefer to face in that second round? Obviously, that series is still up for debate.
I don't think there's any question that they would rather face the Raptors.
Oh, really?
I realize the Raptors are the higher seed. I realize they saw them in the Eastern Conference Finals last year. That's fine, but LeBron has a lot of respect for Giannis, and he has a lot of respect for as the rest of the league ought to at this point. And he has a lot of respect for how they play. He has a lot of respect for their defense, for Jason Kidd. And how about Dellavedova? Everyone was joking at the in the Cavs series. It's going to be Delly's revenge if they get a chance to go against them. So, right. So, who knows ultimately who they're going to face. I kind of feel like the Raptors are either they do it in Game 6 or they do it in Game 7. I kind of feel like the Raptors are going to win the series given that they're more experienced, given that they've been to the Eastern Conference Finals last year. They pushed the Cavs to 6 games. That doesn't mean that that it would be a cakewalk over the Bucks if they were to get them. I still think that Giannis is the ultimate wild card, the ultimate chess piece, the ultimate queen who can move all over, create mismatches, offensive and defensive. And everyone's sort of in the back of their mind hoping that it would be a Giannis-LeBron series. As for the Cavs, I think they would much, much rather face the Raptors.
Mike, last question on Cleveland. You mentioned this having the week off in between, waiting for the next opponent, a chance for them to fix some of these defensive deficiencies. Mitch and I have had a good time laughing about Tyronn Lue's sort of super secret plan to flip the switch and have some sort of defensive
documents.
Yeah, the defensive documents
Right.
that they were going to all of a sudden unveil come playoff time. I don't know if that's ever going to come to pass, but you seem confident, or at least. Do you feel that there is another level they can go to defensively?
Yeah, I don't think there's any question.
Because they didn't really seem to show it in that Pacers series, right?
No, they didn't. In Game 3, I think the Pacers scored 74 points in the first half, and that's just not becoming of a championship-level team. That being said, they're getting their bearings straight. Everybody's healthy. LeBron kept leaning on the fact that they weren't healthy for the entire second half of the year. Every time, you wanted to needle them and peg and highlight their issues, the fact came up that they just weren't healthy. J.R. Smith was out. Kyrie, Kevin Love. I mean, they just weren't whole defensively. So I do think that they can get to another level. And initially I thought that the Raptors might expose them, given that they've got some big guys and some versatile front court pieces. But the reality is the Cavs are still going to make it, and I still think they're going to advance. I don't know that you wanted my prediction, but I do think the Cavs are ultimately going to make it out of the East. And whether they're better defensively or not probably isn't going to be tested until the finals. So I don't know that, in which case then you can ask, is it a failed season or not? And it's hard to argue that it's not, given if you make it to the finals. But the idea is that I definitely do think that they can get better defensively. Their issues specifically lie in transition on the interior, and Ty Lue is a defensive specialist. It's where he, sort of made his name under Doc Rivers, and I feel like the more time he has to game plan and study film of either the Raptors or the Bucks, I think it will benefit them significantly.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. And speaking real quick about the team that the Cavs just knocked out of the playoffs, actually, there's been a lot of talk about the state of Paul George and where he's going to end up, obviously with a year left on his contract, heading into free agency after that.
He doesn't like any of his teammates.
He doesn't seem to like
Evidently.
much of anybody, period.
Right.
Do you have any kind of handle on, do you think Paul George is going to be around next season? Are the Pacers going to play this out with him, or are they going to try to dump him and get something in return before he leaves?
So I don't know how much you guys have delved into this issue, but a lot of it hinges on this $70 million that they could conceivably offer him for a fifth year if he were to get first, second, or third team All NBA status. Sort of an arbitrary litmus test, but it's the awkward, if not, it's imperfect in how the NBA assesses these sorts of things. But it was built into the last CBA. And essentially, if he reaches one of these marks, then the Pacers have a significantly better chance of keeping him. That being said, he has gone on record and said he wants to be on a competitive team, on a championship-level team. Couple issues. First of all, he's got LeBron in the Eastern Conference, has knocked him out 4 of the last 6 years. So you got that obstacle. Second of all, the Pacers regressed this year. Their win total went down when the clock was seemingly ticking in Larry Bird's mind, and yet he didn't necessarily improve the team. You got the Paul George stuff, and then Jeff Teague is a free agent. CJ Miles is a free agent. So Paul George can assess the landscape before he makes an ultimate decision on whether he wants to. He can re-sign this offseason. It's sort of doubtful that he will, given that they just got swept. If you're Larry Bird, you are kicking these questions around. You are asking yourself, do I trade my franchise cornerstone to avoid losing him for nothing? Or do I hold on to him and hope to convince him that I can improve the pieces around him and his supporting cast? It is a fascinating situation, and I know that Paul George was peppered with questions throughout the second half of the year about it. Not that he offered any insight, but it's on his mind. There's no question about it.
Mike, you're based in Chicago. It's been an interesting regular season and early postseason with the Bulls because they had all these mismatched parts. They seemingly didn't know whether they were trying to tank, whether they were going to try to compete for a playoff spot. They've obviously been playing better down the stretch and won the first 2 games of that Bulls-Celtics series. They have a couple of guys who are able to almost flip a switch back onto superstar mode. Rondo, Dwayne Wade, Jimmy Butler's a very good player. When you look at the way that series has shifted midway, with Boston winning the last 2 games, can you point to the Rajon Rondo injury as the turning point, the decisive change? Has Boston just been playing better? Have they figured some things out? Is Chicago just going back to being the win 2, lose 3, win 1, lose 1? What's going on? What's your read on that series?
So obviously there's a lot of things going on within this series. You cannot judge the impact of the Isaiah Thomas, what happened to his sister. You cannot judge that tragedy and how much it affected the team. But you can say that those first 2 games when Isaiah Thomas played, he had a glazed look over his face and just looked like he was not there. And nobody in their right mind could fault him for not being there emotionally. Now, he goes back home to Tacoma, Washington, comes back, he looks energized. He looks like he is competing with everything he has. Of course it's emotional. Of course his life is not going to be the same. But the fact is that, he carried them in 3 and 4. And so you couple that Celtics resurgence, and he's sort of their leader. They take their cues from him. You couple that resurgence with the fact that Rajon Rondo suffered that thumb fracture in Game 2, and it's very obvious that there is just a seismic shift in the momentum. The Bulls are now having to start their 3rd point guard of this series in Isaiah Cannon for Game 5. they went with Rondo. Then they went with Jerry and Grant, who was ineffective. I think they, at times went to Milwaukee Bucks legend Michael Williams. And is that, I'm assuming that's how you guys refer to him, right?
The best shooter in the NBA.
Bucks Hall of Famer,
right.
Please.
Right. Apologies. So, I was looking at the numbers. Isaiah Cannon, he got 29 did not play coaches' decisions this year. He's played 20 minutes since the All-Star break. He was not a part of this series until Game 4. So the fact that the Bulls are now resorting to Isaiah Cannon sort of shows the kind of dire straits that they're in. And now that the Celtics have seized momentum again, or seized home court advantage again, I cannot see them losing this series even after they drop down 2-0.
Definitely. I want to jump real quick to the series that maybe, I don't know, kind of surprised me, being two teams that I've been taught not to trust. But the Wizards and the Hawks tied up at 2 games apiece in their series. Are you kind of surprised at how this series is coming up, Mike? It's maybe not what I expected, but I want to hear what you got.
This series just sort of has the feeling that it's going to go 7. It's a 4-5. You look at what I've always heard expert national reporters say is when you look at a series, when you're assessing a series, and who's going to win, you essentially draft the teams. Who would be the first 5 players taken? And you got to go John Wall and Bradley Beal. They're at least 2 of the top 3. And so when I assess a series like that, I always think that the talent is ultimately going to overcome all else. I'm not too impressed with the Hawks. Obviously, Paul Millsap, he got all riled up over the crybaby comment. That's fine. But do the Hawks, I don't think they intimidate anybody. I think they are a middle of the road team. I was looking at some of the last few postseasons. You're sort of in the East. Let's be honest. You're sort of judged against what you do against Cleveland. That's sort of the litmus test of the postseason. They were swept the last 2 postseasons by the Cavs. Maybe they somehow beat the Wizards and upset them, given that they don't have home court advantage. But regardless, then I probably would take the Celtics in the next round if it's the Hawks. But like I said, it comes down to the talent. I think John Wall is fantastic. I think Scott Brooks has unlocked Otto Porter Jr. I think Bradley Beal is going to be a star if he's not already. And the Hawks, they keep just tossing out their same group, and we get it. I mean, yeah, Dwight Howard, fine. Dennis Schroeder, great, but they just don't do it for me. I think the Wizards will ultimately win that series, and you can't fault NBA fans for overlooking that series, even though it's tied up at 2-2.
Mike, I'm going to take your advice, and you're our national reporter right now. So I'm going to ask you for the next series for Raptors-Bucks, which has been just absolutely topsy-turvy, up and down. And it really looked to us like the Raptors finally played as the superior team for the first time. Played like a 51-win team that has won 10 of the last 12 games against the Bucks. That was always going to be a difficult matchup. And Mitch and I, being Bucks fans and being around the team, covering it more, we might be a little bit too deep in on Milwaukee's side. When you look at that matchup and the players there that stand out with Giannis, DeRozan, Lowry, Middleton, but he hasn't been playing well. How do you evaluate that series, both in terms of the players, the personnel, the stars that are there on the court, and then and moving into a Game 6 in Milwaukee? Where do you see that series heading?
So, going off my drafting theory, I am as high on Giannis as you can be. He is transcendent. He is otherworldly, and you guys would know this. I think he's 22, which is just jaw dropping. So,
and controversy about that. He actually is 22.
Yeah, there's no Thon Maker about it.
Nailed it. That's a great one. No Thon Maker. So you lean on, when looking at this series, you lean on the teams that have been there. And I know that's unsettling for Milwaukee, but with DeRozan, with Lowry, they stepped up in the postseason. Lowry, after he had his strange mental bouts last year or 2 years ago, he got through it, and they gave the Cavs a series. DeRozan has been a star this year. I think he's averaged something close to 27, 28 points throughout the regular season. I love the way that they play off of each other. I love Serge Ibaka. I think he's one of the most versatile bigs there are. Jonas Valanciunas is coming into his own. Obviously, I think he's coming off the bench in this series, but the idea is that I think the Bucks are coming. I really do. I thought the Bucks were coming 2 years ago when they gave the Bulls a fight. That was that was sort of an unexpected series that they gave the Bulls a run for their money. I really do think that the Bucks are coming. I think they surprise everyone by jumping up early in the series. We were having to scramble travel logistics trying to get to Milwaukee as a result. But I don't think it's going to happen. Maybe the Bucks win Game 6, in which case you can have a Game 7 in Toronto and you can talk about whatever scenario were to happen there. But ultimately, you look at the teams that have been there before. They have a pedigree of slowly building, of slowly becoming a respected team in the East, although there's always the elephant in the room, the obstacle that nobody has gotten past LeBron out of the East in the last 6 years. So, fine. I love the Bucks. I love what they're doing. I think they are going to be the future. Both them and Minnesota are going to be the future of the NBA the next 3 or 4 years once the Timberwolves get rolling. But I don't see them ultimately winning this series. I'm sorry. I apologize. But I love Brogdon. I love Delly. I love Giannis. I think they're coming. They're coming soon.
Mm-hmm. All right, thanks a lot, Mike. We really appreciate you lending a little bit of national reporter credibility to our show here.
Okay.
Guys, you can follow Mike at msinger on Twitter. You can read all of his stuff at USA Today. He's an NBA writer, reporter, producer there. And Mike, on Wisconsin. Go Badgers.
Yep, appreciate it, guys. Thanks
a lot.
All right, have a good one.
You too.
All right. Well, we covered the Eastern Conference pretty good there, huh?
We thoroughly covered it. Appreciate having Mike on, as always.
Yeah, that's really good. He's got a lot of insight. He covers a couple of those teams every single day. Mm-hmm. Obviously, Cleveland and Chicago, and has just been had his finger on the pulse of that the Eastern Conference playoff for the entire postseason. Let's move out west. We've got some interesting series narratives that are emerging. I don't think that there's as much really to get into on a game-to-game level. The Warriors have knocked off the Blazers. That series is over and done with, as we all expected. Do you want to pour one out, or do you have any good final words or closing statements for the Blazers?
I'll say that Damian Lillard's rap album was not as bad as I thought it was going to be.
It's like
shout out Dame Dalla. You'll get off SoundCloud pretty soon, probably.
That's like reading. Was that meme of Toy Story 2 wasn't that bad? Really hot takes coming out of here, like the double dribble. But Clippers Jazz. This was a series that Mitch, you were really into from the beginning, and I'm going to give you credit from before the playoffs began. You were all in on Clippers Jazz as being entertaining, going to be a close one. I didn't really care about it because that's just the effect the Jazz have on people. ISO Joe and other Joe Ingles, as well as everybody else that's in that series, and Blake being out, has made this a really interesting matchup. Can you give us your thoughts on it? What's happening, and where do we see it going?
I mean, so it hasn't gone exactly how I'd expected. Obviously,
it's 2-2 now, right?
Rudy Gobert got hurt and just came back. Yes, it is 2-2. Rudy Gobert came back for Game 4, played very well there, just in time for Blake Griffin to go with the toe injury. And so you kind of have two teams here that just haven't been able to get anything together in terms of as soon as one guy comes back, another guy leaves. Gordon Hayward missed most of the game the other night with food poisoning. Not exactly a Jordan flu game situation, but we haven't seen either team really at full strength. Hayward presumably will be back for the next game. And as I mentioned, Rudy Gobert came back and was fairly impactful even after his knee injury.
Real quick,
let's stand by it.
With Rudy Gobert back, let's apply Mike Singer's sort of drafting of the best players in this series. I mean, Chris Paul is obviously the best player. Blake Griffin is out. He's not coming back in this series.
Yeah.
How do these two teams stack up personnel-wise, and do you see that being the difference in the final three games? The talent on the floor, that is, because I think we would both agree that the Jazz are a more cohesive, coherent group together. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I would say minus Blake Griffin, I would have to give that edge to the Jazz with, didn't come into this expecting Joe Johnson to be a significant contributor. I mean, he's an older guy,
all YMCA player right now,
7-time All-Star Joe Johnson. But he just comes in, brings in his lunch pail, does what he needs to do every day, and he'll score you 20 points, and it's fine. And especially with Blake Griffin being out, he's taking advantage of mismatches on smaller wings. He's taking advantage of the fact that the Clippers don't have a great bench, and they don't really have anybody. My favorite old buck, Luke Bob Mute, is out there doing his best. He's doing his darndest, and he's having a really good season.
He's doing his best to not get the ball on offense ever. He just wants reverse layups, cutting across from one baseline, one side to the other, and then he wants
give him a corner
play
three and let him go.
But even he's an all-time defensive guy, and you're powerless to help Joe Johnson when he's in. I'm gonna just junk it up and be like an ultimate dad style basketball player.
Exactly. So weirdly enough, I think Joe Johnson is actually going to be an integral component, if not the compelling force that creates this proper upset.
You have Jazz?
I am taking the Jazz probably in 6 or 7 games in this one.
All right, let's go to Thunder Rockets. That was the series that's got the two most polarizing, talented players in the playoffs. The two front runners for the MVP. Two guys who have split us. Seemingly unsplittable. Reporters have tried to pull us apart. It's like Steven Adams and Russell Westbrook. They have been unable to do so, except when it comes to the MVP. James, it's basically been the MVP race. In a microcosm, right? Like we got Westbrook shooting 45 times, scoring 50 points, having triple doubles. You got James Harden being quietly efficient and winning games. Is there anything that the Oklahoma City Thunder can do to save themselves at this point?
I just don't. I mean, we've seen Westbrook go nuclear a couple times now.
Yeah.
Of the 50-point triple double, just outrageous performances. We saw Steven Adams brick a free throw and then chuck it back out to Westbrook to make a 27-foot three in a game that they came very close to winning, but ultimately didn't.
Yeah. It's basically those two versus
it really is.
The
I mean,
Rockets.
when Houston can just hack a shack on Andre Robertson, they can hack an Andre. There's just not enough depth in Oklahoma City, and there's not enough veteran presence even in their starting lineup. I mean, you're starting Victor Oladipo, who's not having a great time. They're just outgunned, and Russ brings about 6 guns to a gunfight, but he can't do it all by himself.
Yeah, Houston's up 3-1 to the West. I mean, I was going to say the Westbrooks.
Do the Westbrooks?
Do the Westbrooks steal another game, or is this ending tonight?
I think it's over with tonight
in Houston.
I mean, Westbrook. He will do everything he can, but at some point he's got to run out for him.
All right, and the last game that's happening tonight is Grizzlies Spurs. Take this for data, right?
Take it for data.
The ultimate, most lovable, endearing, charismatic NBA coach in the playoffs versus the one that personally I hate the most, Greg Popovich.
I think David Fitzdale might have made himself a ton of money this off.
He's going to have a statue built this summer in front of out in Memphis. And speaking of a lunch pail, he's probably going to be holding like a hard lunchbox because Memphis just loves guys like him.
Yeah.
Okay, so that series has really flipped on its head since the last time you and I had our show because San Antonio was up 2-0, now it's 2-2, basically riding that momentum and playing at home. Is it just going to be Spurs cruising now that they've gotten a little bit of a wake-up call and they're back home tonight, or is Memphis around?
I mean, Memphis made themselves serious. They made people take them seriously in this series, coming back, grabbing 2 more games. But I believe that my favorite coach and your least favorite coach is the coach of the year for a reason. Pop finds a way. It's the old Jurassic Park line, but it's not life. It's Pop. Pop finds a way. I think LaMarcus Aldridge is going to get his act together. He's not been great in this series, but they basically need 2 guys to support Kawhi's brilliance. And once they get that, it's the Spurs, man. Spurs never die.
Greg Popovich hates you and hates me and hates us for doing the show.
I'm not a credentialed media member, so he doesn't hate me.
You're probably talking about a nice fine Moscato or something.
Yes,
We're both drinking Surly's here. Wonderful beer out of Minneapolis that you picked up for us while you were there.
Shout out Minneapolis.
So we really struggled there to find the name of any kind of wine. Really, we're not winos. All right, and then the last, not even a series anymore. R.I.P. Blazers Warriors. But Warriors moving on. Is anyone going to stop them? Who gives them the most potential problems in the West?
I mean, out of the West, like, even though I just sung the praises of the San Antonio Spurs, I think they're going to run into the same problem that a lot of people do, is that you can't cover 4 All-Stars at once. And you can't, the barrage that Golden State can put on you is pretty much unstoppable. So I would still be interested in a Spurs Warriors matchup, because historically those have been pretty good, but no, they are still penciled in for my finals contender out of the West.
All right, and so to wrap it up, I'd like to, as the first round comes to an end and as our show comes to an end today, I want to remember some of the best times we've had at the podium in press conferences, because some of the games have been not very interesting.
Yes.
Mostly because Memphis has taken part in some of the games. Indiana has been a team in the playoffs. But there's been some really, really enjoyable moments. Besides, take that for data, and they're not going to rook us from David Fizdale. We've had Doc Rivers telling a reporter that's the dumbest thing I've ever heard. We've had Fred Hoiberg yesterday, basically, or a couple days ago, basically saying Isaiah Thomas travels every time. We've had guys talk about being crybabies, talking about I don't care if he's being sad. If you had any particularly favorite moments from the press conferences?
I think you pretty much hit all of them, and I know you are maybe even more into this than I am, which is saying something, because I do love me a good soundbite and a good media fight.
Did you like Westbrook standing up sort of standing up for Adams, and also sort of like co-opting the situation, a question that was asked of him?
I understand why Russell Westbrook has to be the face of that team and try to hold everything together, because he is what is literally holding that team together. But it's all right, man. Steve Adams is a big boy. He can answer a question for himself too. That's fine.
And Paul George is out of the playoffs now, so we don't have to listen to him yelling at his teammates and blaming them anymore. So
no, but you will see a ton of photoshops of him in purple and gold. So look forward to that in the offseason.
Right. All right, well, that's been our double dribble show. Sorry, that's a lot of alliteration and double D's in a row. The only double D's on the show today. But we want to thank again Mike Singer for joining us. Again, follow him at msinger on Twitter, and read his stuff at USA Today. You can follow myself at JimmyCarlton88. Mitch, where can people follow you on Twitter?
Always find me on Twitter at Mitch Vomhoff.
Great.
And that's actually probably it. I mean, I guess you can find me on LinkedIn if you want.
Yeah.
It's Mitch Vomhoff.
Yeah, sometimes you post
MySpace.
a nice networking suggestion.
Please endorse me for
copywriting,
sports talking.
All right, and you can
blogging.
obviously follow Bruce Sportsnet, this wonderful network where we talk to you, at Bruce Sportsnet on Twitter and on Instagram. You can watch us live on Facebook and YouTube. And make sure you're listening to us live and later on demand on Spreaker and iTunes. Thanks a lot, guys.